Talia Ricci. Voters in a central Toronto riding are casting ballots today in a federal by-election, one that many see as a referendum of sorts on Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and the Liberal government. Polls opened this morning in Toronto St. Paul's. Let's go live to Chris Glover, who's at the Conservative Party headquarters tonight. Chris, the riding has been a Liberal stronghold for more than 30 years, but some political watchers say a Liberal win is not certain this time around.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Talia. Put it this way, I was talking with a Conservative strategist earlier today who's worked on a lot of different campaigns, and they were saying that generally during general elections, they're looking for ridings in North Etobicoke, North Scarborough, not here in Midtown Toronto, certainly not St. Paul's, and that's because recent history has seen this riding go with the Liberals each election since the early 90s. Carolyn Bennett, the former cabinet minister, just stepped down. That's why this by-election is taking place. She has held this riding firmly through 9 consecutive elections. In many of those elections, she won with more than 50% support. So certainly there is a lot of interest in this riding, and with the federal Liberals doing so poorly in national polling, there's a lot of concern with the Liberal Party as to whether or not they'll be able to hold this seat this time around. Certainly it is looking like a certain amount of a barometer on the interest into Justin Trudeau and his likability. And so, of course, all of the parties are sending a lot of their delegates, a lot of high-profile people to the riding throughout this campaign to kind of drum up support for their candidates. For the Liberals, we have Leslie Church running, and she was a long-time political staffer, a rookie politician herself, but she was the chief of staff, for example, for Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland. So certainly she has a lot of name recognition within the party, but perhaps not with the general electorate. So that certainly will be tested in this by-election now. And Chrystia Freeland, along with a lot of other cabinet ministers and Justin Trudeau himself, have been to the riding over the course of this campaign to try to door knock with her and gain some traction around her candidacy. But it seems like she's getting quite a strong challenge from Conservative rookie politician Don Stewart, who himself has also not run for politics before, though he thinks that he has a good shot here with the Conservatives given how tight things are nationally. And we were talking with some voters in Toronto St. Paul's to see how they're feeling today on by-election day. Here's what some of them had to say.
I like the public representation. I like knowing they're around. I like seeing them in public, and really bringing the policies down from the top.
With the expenses and the rent rises and the grocery price rises and the inflation, the mortgage rate is going crazy. So it's just all in one, and then sometimes we just too much for us. But I think this is the time when we can actually make sure that the people who are in power or in the government can make a change and see that that's what's going to happen. So
anybody but Justin. Anyways, take care.
I want the candidate who's going to work for us. Yes, and who's going to represent us.
So there certainly is a sense of excitement with members of this campaign, given the fact that this has traditionally become a strong Liberal seat, and yet here we are, kind of all hands on deck for the Liberals trying to secure it. And a Conservative source that I was talking to earlier on today said that they actually think that there's a 0% chance that they'll win, though clearly, potentially trying to hamper expectations, temper those expectations. But that source was telling me that a real win for the Conservatives in this riding would in fact be to make inroads against the Liberals here, to close that gap, which has historically recently been so wide apart. And that is what they're going to be looking for, hoping to send a signal to other Toronto ridings, other GTA ridings, that they may also be in play in the next general election, because an important reminder here, the Conservatives have not won one of 25 Toronto seats in the last 3 general elections. So any sort of strong showing from the Conservatives tonight would be a big boost for them. And of course, the Liberals are just hoping to secure this seat for their party.
And so, Chris, what issues are the Conservatives thinking they've picked up this momentum from?
Well, you heard from some of those clips there, Justin Trudeau is kind of one of the big overhanging issues in this campaign. Fatigue around his popularity, certainly. Also, affordability issues is something that's quite big. And Don Stewart himself has a financial services background, so the party's hoping to kind of be buoyed by that as well. And also, a Conservative source was saying that Justin Trudeau's attempt to try to be on both sides of the Israel-Hamas war is something that they think that they're trying to capitalize. Pierre Poilievre, on the other hand, has taken a very hard line in support of Israel, which is certainly something that many people within this riding, particularly the Jewish community, have been asking for, have been demanding. This is a very large Jewish population riding with some 15%. So that Conservative source was saying that that's just one of many factors that they're going to be looking for as they watch the by-election results come in. And just to underscore all of that, I'm standing outside of Cafe Landwehr here on Spadina Road in Midtown. And this is a Jewish-owned restaurant. This is where the Conservatives campaign headquarters will be tonight, Talia. So a lot to watch for.
Lots to watch for. Thanks for that, Chris. Okay, so that's the Conservatives, but there's also a lot at stake for the Liberals tonight. For more on that, let's go to CBC News Chief Political Correspondent Rosemary Barton. Rosie, what are the Liberals saying tonight?
Well, I think Chris gave you a pretty clear picture of how important and significant this riding is to the Liberals and how long, of course, it's been a Liberal riding as well. Let me give you one indicator of that on top of the ones that Chris gave you. Back in 2011, when Michael Ignatieff was Liberal leader, this is just one of 6 ridings that the Liberals held on to in Toronto. They lost all the others. So that gives you a sense of how significant this riding is and how Liberal red it is. Liberals also don't think that they're going to lose tonight, just like the Conservatives are also managing expectations. But they're pointing to that 2011 victory for Carolyn Bennett as a bar of where they want to get to. And in that election, she only won by around 8% of the vote compared to the many times that she was well over 20%. So that gives you a sign of how slim that margin is likely to be tonight. 8, maybe 10%, double digits would be a victory for the Liberals tonight. And Chris is quite right. They've had to put in really far too much effort for a riding like this one, with dozens of cabinet ministers visiting the riding. This should be something that's easy to win, and it's proving to be much more difficult for them this time around.
And so what will the follow-up be for the Prime Minister if the vote doesn't go the Liberals' way?
Well, let's start with the least likely outcome at this stage, anyway, from everything we're hearing from people in Ottawa, and that's if the Liberals lose. I mean, I think it's fair to say that is a devastating loss for the Liberal Party and for the Prime Minister, and you would start to see, I think, some open calls for whether he should continue in the job. But even if the margin is small, Talia, I think you are going to start seeing anxious members of his caucus wondering if they're in a safe seat, whether they could lose, or if they're not in a safe seat, the likelihood that they will most certainly lose. That could lead to pressure on the Prime Minister to consider whether he is indeed the man to lead them into the next election. The good news probably for him is we are moving into the summer months. There are no caucus meetings until the fall, but it does mean that anxiety could build up inside caucus, and ultimately that's where the pressure could come from. So yeah, Liberals hoping for a small victory tonight and saying that a win is a win.
Correspondent Rosemary Barton. A 14-year-old boy is facing 2 charges of first-degree murder tonight in connection with a mass shooting outside Etobicoke High School earlier this month. It left 2 men dead and 3 others injured. Vanessa Balante has the latest.
A 14-year-old boy is facing 2 counts of first-degree murder and 7 counts of attempted murder for the mass shooting that took place at this high school in Rexdale on June 2nd. Detective Sergeant Philip Campbell said the boy was arrested the day after the shooting, but for a stolen vehicle investigation. Police believe the vehicle was used in the shooting, but wouldn't confirm any more details due to the boy's age.
There's a lot more work for us to do, a lot more evidence that we have to go through, a lot of stuff that we have to look at. I don't want to comment too much about the steps or the chain of events that happened.
5 men were shot earlier this month in the parking lot of North Albion Collegiate Institute. Police say a dark pickup truck arrived after the men gathered for a soccer game. 2 suspects got out and began shooting at the group of men before fleeing. Campbell confirmed there is still no known connection between the victims and the suspects.
Hopefully our investigation determines that answer, but right now I don't know what the motive is.
The shooting claimed the lives of 61-year-old Delroy George Parks and 46-year-old Seymour Gibbs. In a Toronto Police Board meeting on Monday, Police Chief Myron Demkew said recent shootings in the city have left deep wounds in the community.
These senseless acts of violence forever change families, and I want to express my condolences to the families and loved ones who have experienced loss due to gun violence. Our city is experiencing an increase in gun violence.
Campbell hopes news of the arrest encourages people with information to come forward.
I'm hoping they see what's happening on the news today and offer some tidbit of information that allows us to continue and really find out what happened, and at the end of the day, bring the people responsible to justice and hopefully make the communities a little bit safer.
Police say at least 2 suspects were involved in the shooting, and the investigation is ongoing. Vanessa Balante, CBC News, Toronto.
A 4th teen accused in the swarming and fatal stabbing of a Toronto homeless man has now pleaded guilty. The girl, who was 14 at the time of the incident, pleaded guilty today to manslaughter in the death of 59-year-old Kenneth Lee. Police allege that Lee, who was living in the city's shelter system, died after he was swarmed and stabbed by a group of girls in December 2022. 8 girls, all of them between the ages of 13 and 16, were arrested in the incident. They were charged with second-degree murder. A judge recently committed 6 of them to stand trial on that charge. The other 2 are to be tried on the lesser charge of manslaughter. 3 girls have previously pleaded guilty in the case. A 41-year-old Toronto man charged in a quadruple fatal shooting in Woodbridge made a brief court appearance today. The Friday shooting left 2 people dead, including a toddler. The man was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 2 counts of attempted murder. The shooting happened inside a home on Casanova Drive. Police identified the victims as 2-year-old Marcus Vu and his 40-year-old mother, T. Trang Do. 2 others were taken to hospital and are in stable condition. Police say the shooting was targeted, but have not commented on the relationship between the victims and the accused. The Ford government is defending its move to shut down the Science Centre, as many question whether it was necessary. There was also an attempt at getting City Hall involved. Queen's Park reporter Lorenda Redekop has more.
3 days after that fence blocked off the Ontario Science Centre, the attraction closed without notice, the minister responsible finally responded.
It's terrible. It's horrible. It was a very difficult decision. I am saddened by it, just like anyone else.
And she says the Science Centre board decided to close it, not the Ford government.
But we as the government stand by that decision.
But some want the government to take another look, holding a rally this weekend. An investor even offered to donate more than $500,000 for repairs. The engineering report that led to the immediate closure looked at the concrete panels on the roof, made of a lighter concrete known as rack, no longer used in buildings today.
They want to move the Science Centre. They wanted a justification, and this was a perfect justification because it was done in terms of safety.
This retired U of T management professor notes while the report found multiple spots with water damage in all 3 buildings, it also found less than 1% of those panels at a critical risk level, 6% at high risk, with the vast majority at medium or low risk, requiring assessment at the 1 or 3 year mark. But Infrastructure Ontario says it's best to replace all the panels at the same time.
That's the most efficient way to ultimately go about replacing RAC and is what we have seen other jurisdictions do.
The report's preferred recommended option was full closure or restricted access. Now a city councillor is putting forward a motion on the Science Centre at this week's council meeting, asking that the city manager look at the province's requirements in its lease to the city, the possibility of the city operating the site, and analyze last fall's business case that the province commissioned.
Let's get real about the fact that there can be a very reasonable investment into the Science Centre to get it fixed up. And it can sustain itself if we do it the right way.
The mayor has already said she supports the motion, as people are blaming the province for the closure.
It was pretty much like a great way to have fun with my family, and then Doug Ford just closed it all up.
Fans of the site hope it can be saved and won't be demolished. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
There's still no timeline on when the Eglington Crosstown LRT will be open. Metrolink CEO Phil Vester says the transit agency is still fixing issues. Dale Manukduk has the story.
With the push of a button, the transport minister and other members of government freed a boring machine used to create 6.3 kilometers of tunnel that will connect Toronto to Mississauga.
Putting another 37,500 commuters within walking distance of public transit. And I'm thrilled to announce today that we have now completed tunneling work on the western underground portion of the Eglington Crosstown West extension, which will run from Renforth Drive to Scarlett Road.
While they celebrated that milestone, there are no victory laps on the Eglington Crosstown LRT, which hasn't opened yet, and we still don't know when it will.
What I can tell you is that we are making relentless progress, good path, good visibility on what needs to be done to get us there, and we will announce an opening date when we are about 3 months away.
There are some hands in the air over the project, but more the wagging fists of frustration type. People have been waiting on the line since construction began in 2011, with completion dates in 2020 and 2021 coming and going.
My daughter goes to daycare just around here. We live about half an hour walk. So I, for now, have to take the bus. I was hoping to be able to take the subway to drop her up and pick her up. Disappointed.
This convenience store selected the location at Keele and Eglinton in large part because of the potential for increased foot traffic.
At that time, there were rumors that they're going to open in the next 3 months, and it's been 7 months since then. So, so I'm hoping that they will open soon, and that will be good for business.
Combine the uncertainty of when the LRT will open with construction to the Ontario line and work being done on the Gardiner, getting around the city has been pain for many.
These are not for the next 5 years. These are 10, 20, 30, 100-year projects that will serve this country and serve this province. And so we've got to get them built. There will be some disruption, but it's because previous governments have failed to do their duty and build Ontario.
Metrolinx's CEO says they have fixed some key issues along the LRT, and training of future crews is already underway. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
The Toronto Raptors are preparing to sign Scotty Barnes to a maximum 5-year contract extension that will make him the highest paid player in franchise history. ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski was first to report the extension. The 22-year-old is coming off his first All-Star appearance after averaging a career high in points, rebounds, and assists last season. The Edmonton Oilers are looking to make history tonight as they attempt to complete the ultimate comeback to bring the Stanley Cup home to Canada. Only one team in NHL history has stormed back from being down 3-0 in the Stanley Cup Finals, with the Leafs accomplishing that feat back in 1942. Our Greg Ross is live for us tonight in Newmarket, the hometown of Oilers captain Connor McDavid. Greg, how are the fans feeling over there?
You know what, Talia? I started driving north on the 404 today, thinking I was going to Newmarket, and somehow I ended up in northern Alberta. At least that's how it feels, because you look around and you see all these blue and orange jerseys. This is a town right now that is behind one team, and it's not the Toronto Maple Leafs. They are cheering for the Oilers, and it's because of this guy right here, Connor McDavid. This is his hometown, and these people want him to know that they're here to cheer for him tonight. They're hoping that he can make history. As you said, Talia, only one team has ever come back from a 3-0 deficit. That was the Toronto Maple Leafs back in 1942, but Connor McDavid seems to be on a mission. We got John Taylor, the mayor of Newmarket. I mean, how excited. You guys have been doing this. We're standing here right now in Riverwalk Commons, which has been renamed Connor McDavid Square, and for good reason. You've been showing all of these games here in the square, every single one of them. Even when they were down 3-0, you were still showing those games here, and people have been coming out to watch.
Yeah, in the rain, everything, and the crowds have been growing, and just bringing the whole community together to get behind something that can just cheer and have fun and bring out the kids. It's just been awesome.
Yeah, you can see in front of me, here are the kids, all with their Oilers jerseys. They've got their popcorn down there in front, ready to sit around for a few hours, watch some hockey. Under the stars tonight, Talia, should be a lot of excitement here. And, you know, it's interesting. You walk around here, you talk to some of these kids. A lot of them are going to the same school that Connor McDavid goes to. We were just talking about that a second. How exciting is it to go to Connor McDavid's school?
I think it's very exciting and very cool. It's a good opportunity because there's so many pictures of him around the school. The school's supporting him, and I think that we've really had a good time at the school celebrating how good Connor McDavid's done in this season.
And they had a celebration today at the school because they're hoping that he not only wins the cup, but he brings the cup back here to Newmarket, maybe even back to the school. Again, Connor McDavid looking to make history. The Oilers playing in Sunrise, Florida against the Panthers. Game 7, Stanley Cup final. It doesn't get much more exciting than that, Talia.
Well, it looks like fun, and what an eloquent little girl. Thanks, Greg. Colette Kennedy joins us now for a first look at the forecast, and it really feels like that humidity has lifted from last week.
Yeah, we are seeing and feeling things a lot more comfortable right now, including for where they're out there enjoying themselves in Newmarket. The temperature is 24 degrees there right now. You're seeing that 24 for Vaughan, and a little bit warmer still. I mean, still holding at 28 in Toronto and at Pearson as well. Hamilton 25 in St. Catharines and Oshawa. You can see there Pickering as well are all coming in at 27. And then when I pull up the Humidex values, very little change, right? Because those dew points have been lower, so that moisture content of the air has dipped down. Now, I will caution you that tomorrow we're going to see the Humidex climbing a little bit, but we're talking low 30s. We're not talking up there around 40, where we were when we were under the heat warning. Overnight temperatures comfortable for sleeping, again, because there's not as much humidity. So when they fall to these numbers, it really feels like it. So overnight tonight, 15 to 16 degrees for that low into Toronto. So we had a little bit of fair weather cloud that developed today. Really was quite a little bit. A lot of blue sky, a lot of sunshine to enjoy. Nice weather for a Monday. Help you get going on a Monday, right? And then as we're just looking ahead to what's to come, well, there is a system that's riding towards us for tomorrow. So it looks like a lot tomorrow morning when it's still to the west, but as it comes towards the Great Lakes, especially the lower Great Lakes, it kind of splits up. So southwestern Ontario will be sort of targeted and up into cottage country. I do still think that tomorrow afternoon between about 1 and say 4, we're going to have that chance through the GTA of getting some showers or even an embedded thunderstorm rolling through, and then we'll clear out again behind that. But beware, there'll be another system behind that for Wednesday with some more showers in the forecast. The winds also will be picking up tomorrow. So from the southwest, at times we're going to have those gusting to 50 or even over 50 kilometers an hour. So a little breezy, especially tomorrow afternoon. 27, there it is, feeling like that 32. Those showers on Wednesday. And then behind that, we really see those temperatures cooling down, but we get the benefit of sunshine Thursday, Friday. I know that's the holiday weekend, and Talia, Saturday's looking a little wet, but we should improve after that.
I'm already thinking about the weekend. Thanks, Colette.
Me too. You're welcome.
A community near Windsor continues to mourn a Harrow family of 4 whose bodies were found at their home last week. Major questions remain unanswered. Dulcin Chen has more.
It's been 4 days since a family of 4 was found dead in their home on County Road 13. But there's still little confirmation about what happened. As of Monday evening, Essex County OPP still have not released the identities of the dead or the circumstances of their passing. But those names have emerged in the community. At a vigil on Sunday, friends named Carly Walsh, her children 13-year-old Madison and 8-year-old Hunter, and her husband Steve Walsh as the deceased. A crowd of almost 2,000 gathered to share their grief.
I was Maddie's best friend. I don't know what to say because this is just really sad. And I also just really love the whole family.
There are no words to say that can describe this tragedy to make anyone feel better. We are all feeling sad, angry, numb, and confused. How do we make sense of all of this?
The generosity that we've seen in the wake of their deaths is a testament to the pillar that this family was in our small community. She was one of the hardest working, fierce, loving people I've ever met. She loved her family endlessly. She was a person who you could always count on.
The Walshes were beloved in Harrow's tightly knit community. Madison and Hunter were active in Harrow minor soccer and other sports through St. Anthony Catholic Elementary School. Carly worked as an assistant manager at Paglioni Estate Winery.
When the worst things happen, worse than we can possibly imagine, when those things happen, we have to encourage each other to be our best selves. We have to help each other. Every one of us need to see that there is still lots of good in this world.
Essex Mayor Sherry Bondi said funeral arrangements are in the process of being made. The Harrow Health Centre will continue to offer mental health support this week. Fundraising on behalf of the family is being handled by the Harrow Rotary Club. Contributions to funeral costs will be collected at the Harrow Open Streets event on Friday. Dawson Chen, CBC News, Windsor.
Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland was in Woodbridge today to announce that Canada is taking steps toward restricting electric vehicle imports from China. The move follows the U.S. and Europe, which both introduced higher tariffs on Chinese EVs this spring. Tyler Cheese has more.
Our government is absolutely seized of the opportunities of EVs, and we're going to ensure that Canada and Canadian workers can keep on succeeding and have great, good-paying jobs. Canadian auto workers and the auto sector, however, are facing unfair competition.
The federal government says it will conduct a 30-day consultation to examine Beijing's trade practices in the EV sector.
Chinese producers are quite intentionally generating a global oversupply that undermines EV producers around the world, including here in Canada.
Both Europe and the U.S. placed higher tariffs on China this spring over similar concerns. Chinese-built vehicles do currently face tariffs in Canada, but the government could impose an additional surtax.
The exceptional policy measures that we are taking or that we are consulting on are necessary due to the pervasive non-market policies and practices that are employed by the Chinese state in the EV sector that threaten Canada's potential. China puts their practices at risk, flooding our market and undercutting our homegrown businesses and supply chains, and doing that also puts Canadian jobs at risk.
The government's consultation will also look at adjusting federal incentives for zero-emission vehicles, including rebates of up to $5,000 available to Canadians who buy or lease an EV. It will also look at how cybersecurity and data security may be impacted by Chinese-made EVs. Those representing the automotive industry are applauding the government's efforts.
Here we price carbon, and here we invest in clean energy. Those investments cost a lot, that infrastructure costs a lot. We shouldn't just allow somebody who's going to make dirty, clean vehicles to plug into our infrastructure at our cost.
He says these measures will also prevent the import of vehicles made under unethical labor practices.
The Chinese have a different commitment to labor and labor costs and labor treatment. That means how long the shift is, how much they pay people. They're real issues.
The government consultation is set to begin on July 2nd. Tyler Cheese, CBC News, Toronto.
New analysis of federal data on the Temporary Foreign Worker Program shows a dramatic jump in the program's use over the past few years. Paula Duachik has more from Calgary.
Federal data shows that last year, Canadian employers were approved to fill about 240,000 jobs with temporary foreign workers. That's more than twice the number of approvals they got 5 years ago in 2018. The gains happen across a wide variety of jobs in different industries. Across the economy, there were major gains in jobs ranging from food counter attendants to administrative assistants to construction laborers. Now, it's important to point out this data is about the number of workers that businesses have been approved to hire. It doesn't directly translate to the number of temporary foreign workers who are in Canada, but it does show that businesses have been moving in big numbers to make use of the program. Part of why they're moving to fill more jobs this way is because they can. Coming out of the pandemic, the federal government loosened some of the program's hiring restrictions to provide relief to businesses dealing with labor shortages. Some industries that were having an especially hard time finding workers, like food service and accommodation, were allowed to triple the number of low-wage workers they could hire this way. Still, some economists criticize this move.
We hear a lot about labor shortages framed as an economic problem, as like a first-order economic problem, as if we don't address these labor shortages, the economy is going to somehow fall apart. But that doesn't make sense for economists. You know, for economists, labor shortage is very much an economic opportunity. It's an opportunity to incentivize businesses to try to get more out of their existing workers, through investments in technology, through training, through hiring workers that are typically overlooked, like workers with disabilities.
Employment and Social Development Canada declined an interview for this story, but in a statement, a spokesperson said this was a short-term move to help businesses coming out of the pandemic, and now labor market conditions are better, it's easier to find workers locally, and so they're tightening up some of the program restrictions once again. Paula Duhacek, CBC News, Calgary.
Turning to the Middle East, the Israeli Prime Minister says the intense phase of fighting in Gaza's southern city of Rafah is nearly over. He also says that Israel plans to redeploy troops to its border with Lebanon. Margaret Evans has more from the border.
We're up in northern Israel, about 5 kilometers from the border with Lebanon. There's been a real increase in cross-border attacks from both directions in recent days, and with it an increase in rhetoric from both sides. We've had the Hezbollah leader, Hassan Nasrallah, saying he can reach deep into Israel. A response from Israel, the Israeli military saying that they've approved ground invasion plans for southern Lebanon if they are needed. In the meantime, you have tens of thousands of people on both sides of the border who've been displaced. We've been speaking to some of them on the Israeli side. Some of them say that they've had enough, that the Israeli government hasn't got a plan for them. They feel forgotten given the fighting that's taking place in Gaza. Some others say that it's time for the Israeli government to step up and solve the problem with Hezbollah and this border militarily. The fear for many is that the longer that the conflict continues in Gaza, the greater the likelihood that this border could kick off in earnest and with devastating consequences to populations on both sides. And not just those populations, but the rest of the Middle East fear that this could be or become a regional war. Margaret Evans, CBC News in northern Israel.
Princess Anne has canceled her upcoming visit to Canada. She's been hospitalized in England after minor injuries following an accident. Heather Gillis has the details.
This area will be flooded with people on July 1st for a historic ceremony here at the National War Memorial in St. John's. Newfoundland's unknown soldier will be laid to rest. But a major figure will be absent. The Colonel-in-Chief of the Royal Newfoundland Regiment, Princess Anne, has been hospitalized with a concussion and minor injuries, according to Buckingham Palace.
She'll be missed.
The Royal Canadian Legion Newfoundland and Labrador Command extended the invitation. The Princess was last here 8 years ago, commemorating the 100th anniversary of the Battle of Beaumont Hamel.
We are all disappointed that she can't make it, but things happen, and we were so glad that she initially agreed to come over to be with us on this tremendous historic occasion of the 100th anniversary and the repatriation, and to be with her regiment.
Buckingham Palace isn't divulging details, but it's understood the Princess Royal was potentially struck by a horse's head or legs. Emergency services were called to her country estate, and she was taken to hospital in Bristol. The palace says the princess is recovering but remains in hospital as a precaution. Doctors have ordered her to cancel engagements for the next week, including her trip to Newfoundland and Labrador. Premier Andrew Furey says he's saddened to hear of the accident and that the princess will be absent from next week's commemorative events. He's also wishing her a speedy recovery.
Well, the royal family have had a rough year. So we had the King's diagnosis in February, and then, of course, Kate's diagnosis in March.
Royal watcher Crystal Rose is disappointed, too. She missed the princess's previous visits to the province and was looking forward to this one.
We've had a lot of health problems going on in the royal family. And I know Princess Anne had stepped in to take over some of King Charles's duties, and now she's in hospitals.
It's expected the princess, who is 73, should return home later this week. Buckingham Palace expects her to make a full recovery. It's said there are plans to explore how her visit to the province can be adapted. Heather Gillis, CBC News, St. John's.
22 people are dead following a fire at a lithium battery plant in South Korea. Officials say the fire was likely sparked by exploding lithium batteries. Most of the victims were migrant workers from China. The fire reportedly began in the area of the plant where workers inspect and package the batteries. Authorities have not yet determined the cause of the explosion. And as we head to break, here's a look at where the markets closed today. The TSX rose 294 points, the Dow climbed 261 points, and the dollar traded up to 73.19 cents US. We'll be right back. Peel Police held a groundbreaking ceremony for their new 23 Division location today. It will be at the corner of Lagerfield Drive and Mississauga Road.
This building is going to provide not only a place for us to get to people faster and quicker, but it is also going to give a space to our employees and our staff that is safe, allows them to be effective.
The 61,000-foot division will be a net zero emissions building, and construction is expected to be finished by the end of 2026. Once the new location is built, it will be able to accommodate the most officers in the region. Residents in South Etobicoke say a rat infestation is plaguing their neighborhood, and they're blaming it on an impromptu garbage dump set up by people living in a nearby tent encampment. They say the city has been no help with solving the problem. Brittany Billette has the story.
It's a sight that makes your skin crawl. Dan Irwin says he caught this rat plus 4 others in the last 10 days, and he spotted many more around his property. He's lived in Etobicoke for 39 years and says in that time he's never seen a rat, let alone an infestation of them. That was until this spring.
It's a nice community is deteriorating because of inaction by the city.
Irwin and his Judson Street neighbors say this makeshift dump is to blame, and they've spotted people from a nearby encampment at a local park tossing food and trash in it. They say the first tent popped up last August. Now there are 6, and an additional resident lives in a lean-to right beside the dump. Irwin and his neighbor Sarah Giles says first and foremost, they want those individuals moved into housing. And then
there needs to be massive clean out, a total haul over. It needs to be aggressive action.
Local councillor Amber Morley confirmed a person is living beside the dump, but says he and others won't be forced to move out in accordance with city policy.
We're working with the individuals along with our encampment team to make sure that they are on lists for housing and additional supports, and that we can get them indoors as soon as possible.
Residents also say they're frustrated with how the city has handled their concerns.
And I've even asked specific questions. Somebody please advise our neighborhood what we can do about rats. City has dealt with it before, obviously. We don't have a clue. Do we poison them? What do we do with the carcasses once we poison them? How do we prevent them from migrating?
In a statement to CBC Toronto, the city said, quote, "The City of Toronto has engaged in multiple investigations of the Judson Street site in response to service requests submitted to 311. The city understands residents' concerns and is actively working to remedy the situation." The city also added that crews were there a month ago and cleared up to 4 tons of waste, and they were back there again today to do the same thing. Staff say they're investigating longer-term solutions, but in the meantime, they're encouraging residents to look on its website to see the ways it can prevent and remove rodents. Brittany Billette, CBC News, Toronto.
TTC riders are dealing with a big change on the transit service. Buses are replacing streetcars on Spadina, likely until the end of the year to allow for track work. Ali Chiasson reports.
If there is anything good to say about the Spadina streetcar, it's that it operates on its own transit priority corridor. But this is exactly what they are closing to do this kind of repair work. They are going to be replacing some of the streetcar tracks along here and also repaving. This crew, I believe, will start the work on repairing the overhead power lines as well. Obviously, they need the space to do this, so they have to close it down. And they also need the time to do this, and it could take about 6 months. They are estimating to be finished by December. Here's what TTC spokesperson Stuart Green has to tell us.
We have some work that's being done in a couple locations on Spadina. At the station, we're preparing for some platform expansions that are coming up in the next couple of years. As well, we're doing some work in the south end. So this is all important infrastructure work. And as a result, we've removed the streetcar service entirely. We've got extra bus service out there as well. We're putting some extra service on the 509 to supplement that and make sure that people have alternatives if they want to take a route north or south.
The buses might be working for folks now, but the real test is going to be in the afternoons and into the evening rush hour.
No, it's okay. For me, was perfect. Just I received the notification before in the app, so yeah, for me was good, and the service was quick.
Wasn't prepared for the timings. I just didn't arrive early here. I think if I was prepared, I would have managed.
There's not a lot of difference for me because as long as I can get to work on time, then will be fine.
Yesterday I was here and it was fine, but as like the week goes on and more cars appear, it's gonna get even worse.
This is normally a very busy streetcar platform, but as you can see, there isn't a soul and there isn't a streetcar. Because as this orange sign indicates, and you'll see these all along Spadina, the 510 Spadina streetcar turns into the 510 bus. So you won't be boarding the buses on this streetcar transit corridor. You will be boarding the bus, like these people are, across the street. This is going to be in place, like I said, for about 6 months. However, we could take example from the St. Clair streetcar corridor, which actually underwent the same kind of repairs, and they finished weeks ahead of schedule. So hopefully the same can be said for Spadina. Ali Chiasson, CBC News.
The City of Toronto is launching a pilot project to help maintain the urban meadow ecosystem at the Don Valley Brickworks Park. As you saw there, a specialized eco-herd of approximately 40 goats got to work today, eating away at excess vegetation and weeds. The city describes the project as the practice of using livestock to address issues such as invasive plants and soil improvement. The goats will continue their hard work until Wednesday, and the public can view them getting their graze on from 10 a.m. until 8 p.m. starting tomorrow. Colette's back now with our extended forecast. And Colette, the heat dome has had more impact than just heat and humidity. It's actually caused some flooding too.
Yeah, it really has, because it sort of just, blocked everything up and held up the systems so that things could move through. So the heat dome, even though it's, let up on us, still in place, still some incredible temperatures they're seeing. But through the Midwestern U.S., while it's there, it blocks systems from moving along. So you can get the same kind of system sitting there and pouring rain over the same areas. And that is the case in terms of what's happened in parts of the Midwest. We have some images we can show you. We're talking about 175 to 275 millimeters of rainfall that's fallen through parts of, this is Minnesota, taking a look at the Blue Earth River and the Rapidan Dam there, that it is imminent that this could be failing. So they're watching that very, very carefully. But not just in Minnesota, Iowa, parts of South Dakota as well, all dealing with this flooding. And, we're talking about a situation, we were talking about this recently for Florida. We're not talking about a 100-year flood or 500. This is a chance of a flooding like this, 1,000-year flood. So, yeah, incredible situation what we're seeing here with the changes with our climate. All right, let's take you back closer to home for what's going on with the current temperatures, which are quite comfortable. I mean, upper 20s, but when you've got low humidity, that 28 feels pretty good. And it does cool off once the sun sets because there's not as much of a moisture content to the air. We get clear skies tonight and a nice start to the day tomorrow. But then by the time we get to midday, that's when the system and this front will be coming through. Winds kicking up from the southwest, but also some showers and thunderstorms. Greater chance north of us towards cottage country and also in southwestern Ontario, but still between about 1 and 4 through the GTA. I'd be watching for some wet weather to be rolling through pretty quickly, though, before it moves on. Then we get a break, but the next system comes through with some more widespread rain showers into Wednesday. And I mentioned those winds kicking up. So turning to the south to southwest, but some of the wind gusts will not only exceed 40 or 50, but potentially even 60 kilometers an hour, especially coming around towards the Niagara region. So it's actually going to pull the humidity back up a little bit, but we're talking, low 30s, not towards 40 in terms of the feel-like temperature. And mid-teens for the lows tonight, 27 tomorrow. Behind that system, Talia, we're going to see things kind of cooling down a little bit, but the sun will be back after Wednesday.
Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
And that's our show for you tonight. Thanks so much for watching. You can stay caught up on news anytime on our website, cbcnews.ca.